Great lane level, look at it. Hustles right into the pocket.
5-step delivery, high back swing. Wow, look at the loft there. Working on a 4-bagger.
But, we got Frog here, got this guy, and then now we also have the sergeant there protecting the herd handbook. So that's always a plus. But we do have to talk about something to start the pod. We have to talk about your bowling skills, Tiz. This is an intervention. Your parents just come out from the basement.
Yeah, the whole town just.
We're here because we love you.
Inside here, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
It was shameful. Before
it's needed this intervention here,
Yeah.
I need to take some words of advice and wisdom from the guy I'm sitting next to right now.
Won the game with a solid. I think I got an 89 or something, which I think is average, but it was good enough to win.
Beat all of us.
Yeah.
There was a lot of.
I haven't bowled in 10 years, and now I had no clue how that was gonna go, especially when I first got there, and then the first roll I had was a gutter ball. I was like, this is gonna be a long game, and then the next one I got all the pins. I'm like, what?
You're all calm, cool, and collected.
I had it, dude. Rick Kenmore style, just.
I was trying all sorts of ways to bowl the ball. The way I kind of have been doing it and used to doing it is why I'm not a good bowler. I have this weird way of trying to spin the ball.
That was crazy. You're throwing the ball I've never seen anyone do that before.
I can't.
That's wild. That's a wild move in bowling.
It takes a lot of accuracy. Clearly, I'm trying to on the right side of the line. I'm trying to spin it where it comes back over and then boom, knocks it out.
It would just go right into the gutter.
They don't work.
I swear to God.
And then I said screw the holes, and then I started rolling it underhand, and that was a little better. And then I went granny style. Everyone
that was as I didn't want to say this there because we were in the social setting, but as a man, I need to tell you that was a little shameful. When you got to that, I was
it was getting to a point where I was bring out the roller or just put up the bumpers,
Yeah, in hindsight, the bumpers probably would have been solid for the game that we were playing because all of us I think had a few gutter balls, but you had quite a few. You had quite a few. And it derailed your game. I mean, there was one point where we were all in the 40s and the 50s in the 6th or 7th game of it, and then you had 19. And then at one point you went to the snack stand and I went for you and I channeled your luck. I guttered for you and I was like, oh well, at least it's realistic. But anyway, I mean, we had a good time there bowling. Shout out Ashley, happy belated birthday at this point, but it's for her birthday. But while we were there, we were talking a little bit about these fights because obviously this was the evening, so right before the main card kind of started.
I'll stick to talking fights and training in the gym.
We'll be fair. Neither of us have a future in bowling, but we might have a future in this, maybe. If people didn't click off at the first few minutes of us talking about the lanes, but I don't know. But to get to the fights, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit at the bowling alley. Well, actually, at the Funplex bowling alley. Never mind. But anyway, so we were talking about this, and my coworker, he kind of got me more hyped for this card just kind of by asking me about it, which is funny because that's kind of a simple way to get manipulated into being hyped for something. Because we usually talk about fights. He's a big fight fan. He follows the pod and stuff. And he comes up to me. He's like, what fights are on this weekend? And I told him, it's a flyweight fight, Kape versus, and I think it's Is it Almabayev? I know the last name. I'm bad. You know me with these names, man.
I know how I have an idea of how it's spelled, but I can't see it in front of me right now. You have
it's AYU. So I'm gonna.
Almabayev.
That's just for IU is the first name.
Okay, yeah.
I know who he is, but I'm just so bad with these names, man. I'm getting worse and worse. But I'll just go with Almabayev so I don't keep butchering the first name. But yeah, we were talking about it at work, and the more I thought about it, and me and you have talked about flyweight a lot on the pod, and just kind of how right now there's kind of a lacking of contenders there, and this main event, honestly, the reason why I got so hyped for it when I started talking about it to my coworker, I was like, this might actually produce a new number one contender at flyweight, which we desperately needed. And I think in the main event, Manel Kape, he really delivered, and he wins the fight versus Almabayev, third round TKO. I mean, at the end there, he was literally running after him, just hitting him with punches, which was kind of crazy. But, I mean, we could talk about the finish, but just to start with the fight itself, and I know people are talking about the eye poke and stuff too, and we can get to that if you want, but in terms of just the fight itself before that, I mean, Manel Kape, his footwork and the creativity that he has with his striking is just insane to me. And like, the more I thought about it, I really do think that this guy has the best footwork in the UFC, because not only does he like switch stances, he throws constant feints, but then also has like, he's never throwing his first strike from the same spot. Like, you know, a lot of fighters who have like a boxing style, they're going to start with a jab. Manel Kape, you really have no clue what's coming and from what stance, or if he's even going to throw because of all the feints. And in this fight, he was doing all that while backing Almabayev up against the cage pretty much the entire fight. So because of that, like, yeah, that eye poke happened at a pretty unfortunate time considering what happened right after. But to be honest, even if that didn't happen, I think Manel Kape was well on his way to a win, even though Almabayev was a pretty game opponent, all things considered.
No, I mean, he was dominating him. Let's be honest here. I think you could comfortably say 2018 after the first two rounds, and then at the end, you like those elbows, the 12-6 elbows.
I'm so glad that those are like legal now, because there was no reason why they shouldn't have been.
He was pulling out seemingly every sort of strike in the book, all while still defending takedowns, sprawling very well, impressive, and it was just a world-class showing all around as a mixed martial artist for Manel Kape. I think like it was one of those fights where there was so much more to be like seen. I think had the fight gone the distance, but at the same time you still got enough to say he's next in line for the title. I mean, dude, this guy was channeling his inner Anderson Silva the way he was creating these openings and stuff.
Yeah.
And the footwork, like you said, and just just the combos and all of that. It was I had a lot of fun watching this fight. Probably a fight I'm gonna watch again at some point, maybe later today.
I mean, I think you could argue this was his best win in the UFC so far when you think about the stakes of it, and then like the change of opponent at the last minute, and he was still able to dominate the fight in the way that he did. Because I think that's kind of why at first I wasn't as hyped for the card, because I think I was still upset that Brandon Royval wasn't in the fight, because I think Royval versus Kape would have been insane. But I also think that Almabayev, in a sleeper type of way, he's kind of earned this spot. I mean, he's had a pretty good run up until now, and he showed that he has some heart, and like he's got some dog in him, but I think he just ran into a much more superior striker in Kape.
There's levels to this striking game, brother.
Brother. Talking about grappling. No, I mean, you were talking about the grappling before, actually. I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't even write that in the outline, but his takedown defense actually looked really good in this fight, and we've seen with Kape in the past that hasn't always been the case, so it's good to see him make that heavy improvement, because he always had like pretty good takedown defense, but if you remember like the Marquez fight, other fights like that, like he kind of, you could get him down. But in this one, he seemed pretty prepared for everything, which is wild considering this opponent was on relatively short notice. So I was super impressed. And you kind of mentioned it before, and I do kind of want to get into it. I agree with you. I think Manel Kape should get a title fight next, because I know right now the rumor is that we might see Pantoja versus Kara France in Jersey in June, which is cool. But, I mean, that's a good fight. But at the same time, I don't know, like, what do you want to see more? Do you want to see Pantoja versus Kara France and then have Kape fight the winner? Or do you think Kape has earned maybe the chance to jump Kara France?
I think Kape's earned the right to jump in front of the line, to be honest. But it's more of just out of respect and a testament to Kara France, who has more staying in the division than Manel Kape at this point. So, I mean, I think either way, they could really take Pantoja to their limit. It's just that, um, who do you think would give the better fight? To be honest,
It's a good question because I mean it's two strikers, but very different
Exactly.
styles. Because Cara France, he's going for the knockout and the kill shot, but Cape, I mean he has that type of power obviously as we just saw, but he's definitely way more technical. And honestly, I think he'd do better at defending the takedowns, which is why I think that's a more appealing fight, at least just to me personally. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kai Kara France, we've talked about this for a flyweight, has some of the most insane power for that weight class. And because of that, the fight with Pantoja is just intriguing. Like, you have to give him that true puncher's chance, even if you don't think that he can compete with him in terms of technique. But Manel Kape, I think that if he could defend the takedowns, that's a tough fight for Pantoja on the feet. While against Cara France, I think it's a little more even. But I think both of them are good fights. I think really what matters at this point is how true are these rumors that this fight is being worked on. Because if Pantoja versus Cara France is like being finalized, well, this conversation kind of gets null and void. But I think even if that fight gets booked, I think Kape has earned a title shot with this win. It was just too impressive to overlook. I don't see why you'd book him against anyone else. I mean, even against Royval, like I don't think you really need to see it at this point. I think he's because like I said, flyweight needs exciting contenders, and Manel Kape puts on exciting fights. I think it's a relatively simple solution, But speaking of exciting fights, man, the fight right before that with Cody Brundage and Julian Marquez, that was one of the crazier rounds I've seen in quite a long time, man. The way that both of their mouthpieces fell out I think around the same time too. And I like was it Dominic Cruz who was like, imagine if he gave the wrong ones back to each person. That would be kind of funny. But
and they were socking each other,
Dude.
both without mouthpieces. I was waiting for a tooth to fly out, but
I mean, dude, I didn't want either of these guys to lose. I'm such a big fan of both of them. Marquez, I mean, who doesn't like the Cuban Missile Crisis? And we were talking about yesterday. We were talking in the car, remember, on the way to bowling about how Julian Marquez had the fumble of the century with Miley Cyrus a few years ago. Throwback to that. I hope you guys remember that. That was like an iconic moment. Especially, that was in the Apex era. When they had every card there, if I'm not mistaken. So, man, good times. But, he didn't look horrible in this fight versus Brundage. I mean, obviously, he hurt him like Brundage hurt him. I mean, so this fight was just a war for the 4 minutes that it lasted, and Brundage though he gets the dub. And
but
puts
here's
the
the thing, right? And just centering around Julian Marquez in general, because I kind of feel bad for him. It's one of those fights and one of these losing streaks where it's like maybe consider calling it quits, hanging up the gloves.
Well, did you see after he was taking the gloves off in the octagon? But some fighters do that. But Julian Marquez, I mean, we were talking about it. He's had a lot of injuries and some long layoffs, and I think in MMA a long layoff is a little rough. And how old is he now, Julian Marquez? He can't be like that young.
Because he started the fight taking center stage, but it was
34.
Cody Brundage fighting on the front foot for pretty much the entire fight. Which is one of those things where it's like I don't know if Julian Marquez just was kind of. I don't think it was a failing out process. I think he was more or less just, Cody Brundage was just the more imposing fighter, and Julian Marquez is more or less just waiting for him to make a mistake, so he can. Because when he was throwing, the right hand at least, he was landing, and that's what gave you the kind of fight that it was for what it was worth.
I just think the layoff has to matter, and it's not like he's had a crazy amount of time, but he just hasn't really been active. So he fought yesterday, and then he fought yesterday. 2024 he fought in June. That's it. 2023 he fought in March. That was it. And by the way, both of those fights were knockout losses. And then 2022 was really Yeah, no, 2022 he only fought once as well, and that was another knockout loss. He was really promising, I remember, during like the pandemic era because he had some decent wins. Yeah, a couple submissions, one over Sam Alvey, Maki Pitolo, I remember him. But yeah, it's just I think when you have a lot of injuries and you're not getting in there enough, and then you face somebody as hungry as Cody Brundage clearly is, and who, like you said, is going to walk you down and hit you with those big shots. It's just a rough spot to be in. I figured this was going to be a war, but I thought it was going to go a little further than it did. But either way, I mean, it was a fun fight. Both of these guys put it all on the line in the short time they were in the cage together.
Yeah.
But, man, I'm a fan of Cody Brundage. And I don't know if you saw this, the story that he told during the week at Media Day about his daughter. I wish I'm bad with, like, the names of, genetic disorders. I'm not a doctor. But he was talking about how his daughter has this genetic disorder that, like, affects her muscles and stuff like that. And she's constantly having to go to, like, treatment and rehab and stuff. And he was kind of getting like emotional about it, talking to the reporters about how like there's days where he'll get up and he doesn't want to go to the gym, but he's like his little girl is going to the the doctors and fighting every day. It's like I can't go to the gym. It's like you can't help but respect that, and especially after that fight too that he gave Bo Nickel. If you remember when they fought, that was a pretty good scrap at the end of it. And I know he lost that fight, but he put on a good showing against, if you remember, what was like a minus 1,200 favorite or something, but. Great win by Cody Brundage. I thought this was a really fun fight. And like I said, the main card had a lot of fun fights on it. Started off a little so-so in the prelims from what I saw, but the main card was pretty solid, at least to me. And that's usually like how those Apex cards go, man. We've talked about it all the times. They might not have like the biggest marquee names on them, but in terms of the quality of the matchups, it seems like it's a pretty good spot for those cards. But, next week, definitely ain't going to be at the Apex, though. UFC 313. I'm super excited for this. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, and then the co-main event. Still sad that Dan Hooker had to pull out of that fight, but we still got a really sick rematch between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. And, yeah, man, and the rest of the card is pretty solid, too. But I'll ask you this. I think initially everybody was probably most hyped for Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. And I think a lot of people are still hyped for Gaethje versus Fiziev, but out of that fight versus the main event, like which one kind of gets you going a little more?
Still the co-main event.
Yeah.
Justin Gaethje and Fiziev. Even obviously, you can use their last fight as kind of let's say a catalyst, right, for why UFC would want to book. Well, at least on short notice for Fiziev, why they would want to, why he would be willing to step in too, because I think still at this point a win over Justin Gaethje puts you firmly into title contention. So that's what Fiziev needs. He's a really unique fighter for 155, and
his Muay Thai is
the Muay Thai
nuts.
exactly.
It's so nuts.
Yeah. And kind of a division like that where everyone already is so versatile. I think he brings a nice blend too, and really overwhelms a lot of guys, including someone like Justin Gaethje. So,
dude, they had a great first fight. That was a majority decision. I kind of forgot. I knew it was a war, but I forgot that it got to a majority decision.
Yeah, it's hard for
crazy.
Fights that good to like kind of really put your finger on what the decision exactly was if you don't remember exactly, because you expect not that you expect fights like that to end and finish, but because both guys had such a good showing, it's kind of like, man, I wish both of them won. Yeah. But yeah, majority.
Damn, it was almost a draw anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing.
So,
it was a great fight. You kind of forget how close it was.
Out of those two fights for next week's pay-per-view, I think the co-main still is the one to really deliver the most as in terms of like bonuses and stuff.
For sure.
But because I'm on record saying for the main event that Ankalaev, I'm fine waiting for him and to get his shot against Alex, and I think at this point where he is more of a grappling southpaw that can present a lot of issues for Alex. I think Alex now is at a point where he's kind of really, molding out the rest of his style as a mixed martial artist. Where at first, obviously, it was just it was more or less strictly kickboxing, and then like you would get the takedown defense every now and then. But I think Peloton is at a point now where he is gonna be able to hang on the ground if it goes there, and I don't know. Hopefully, we'll see if maybe he is on his back and he has to weather some sort of ground and pound. I think that would be interesting. But I feel like I would be interested to see him out. Just get a lot of kind of sort of maybe side control, half guard or whatever, and see how he can work maybe some jiu-jitsu into his game. But
I don't know if it depends on really how it goes on the feet. And to be honest with you, I'm almost more worried about the feet than I am on the ground.
You're worried about the feet for Peloton?
Yeah. Well, not like worried as in I think he's going to lose, but like when I think about stylistically, you think about him in the past versus like technical southpaw strikers. You got Roundtree. That fight was a war. He had Pereira in trouble at points.
Yeah.
And then even at middleweight, Adesanya, he switches stances, but primarily he fights southpaw, and he had trouble with that fight too. I mean, both of them really were. I mean, that's a rivalry of the century, obviously, as we know. But I think that's kind of the reason why the UFC has always been so hesitant to book this fight, because I do think that out of all the light heavyweights right now, style-wise, Ankalaev is probably the biggest threat to Pereira right now, which is why I'm like so excited for it, because it's kind of rare in MMA where you really have like the champ versus the clear number one contender who's like a real threat to him. Like, because, with MMA, there's a lot of politics, especially in the UFC. The guy who has the most fun matchup or is going to be like promoting the fight the best might get the title shot over the guy who actually deserves it. In this matchup, it's like I said, champ versus clear number one contender, and this is the fight that needed to be made. And I'm glad that it's finally here. So it's going to be an interesting one, man. I hope it's fun. I really do. I think it has the potential to be like a technical type of war. So yeah. I guess we'll find out.
But that's what makes Alex Pereira, because whether he's got you up against the cage because you're already so tired, or he's really putting together his his ones and twos, his hooks obviously, which he's like patented at this point for. And even the leg kicks as well, or he's circling and having to counter strike and fight off the back foot. I think he does both so well. So for me, it's kind of like one of those things where Ankalaev is gonna have to like I don't think he can really. If he fights from range, it would have to take that one punch to put Alex down, because otherwise on the feet. I don't know. So I guess we'll see if whether or not Alex is looking to just put it away earlier. He's gonna be okay going all five. So
that's the thing with Alex too. He's truly he's a special type of talent in there, and like you said, he's really rounding out his game. And this might be the fight where he gets to prove that. And I mean,
I think it's hilarious how I see a clip of him working on his wrestling in the gym, and I feel like, I don't know if he's maybe working on a wizard trying to get out of a single leg that the guy has on him, because truth be told, none of us are in the gym, so how are we supposed to know? It's just a clip of him working on his wrestling. So
it's like when they release Conor McGregor sparring clips, and everybody's like, "He's so back."
When he gets taken down, everybody is up in arms and throwing a huge deal about it. Like, oh, you expect this guy to hang with so and so as a wrestler? You think would you rather him not just put wrestling to the side altogether and not try to work on that and get better on that in the gym, or what?
It'll just be like James Toney getting taken down and just beat up when he fought in the UFC. I don't know, man. I mean, I think that this is just the right matchup at the right time. It almost adds to the hype that it feels like it's been like delayed this long, because like I said, it feels like Ankalaev has kind of deserved this for a minute now. And to see that now it's finally time to get this fight, and like we're literally not even a week away from it at this point, I'm just so excited for it. And anytime Peloton fights, I'm always going to be tuning in. And I think a lot of casuals probably tune in every time Pereira fights too, because I mean, dude, I think outside of Conor McGregor, maybe Israel Adesanya right now, he's the biggest star in the promotion. I think in terms of active fighters, he probably is the biggest star in the UFC. So I'm super pumped for this. I think that this card's going to be fun, and even the undercard is really good. We'll get more into that next week, though. By the way, I like the hoodie you're wearing. I didn't put this in the outline, but shout out Damian Nelson for that crazy knockout. Combat FC 9, man.
Combat FC 9, I had exactly. Finally, it happened again this past weekend. So a lot of guys we know got back in that cage to, just put on a show. Yeah, so.
That's what they do, man. Combat FC, they're such a fun regional promotion for those of you guys who haven't seen our content with them in the past. We went to Massachusetts, obviously, for their last 2 cards. We couldn't go for Combat FC 9, though, last weekend, just, circumstances. But, yeah, man, we still paid attention to the results because, like you said, there's, a lot of people who we know in there, and we want to see them do well and put on some fun fights, and Combat FC always does that, so definitely always want to shout them out because honestly, they've done a lot for the channel, too. I mean, those are some of our most fun videos that we've made. So if you haven't seen them, check them out. But, yeah, man, I mean, that's pretty much all I got for this one. Next week, like I said, it'll be the recap for UFC 313 and any other news that may pop up in the meantime. And also, be on the lookout probably around Tuesday or Wednesday. We're going to have a video coming out. It's going to be a special announcement for the channel. I think the people who are close to us, here in northern New Jersey are probably going to be more hyped about this than maybe people who watch us, wherever else. But we have something fun coming up that we've been planning for a while, and we think you guys are going to have some fun if you guys want to join us. So
subscribe.
Yes, sir. Subscribe, and we hope you enjoyed. See y'all.
Easy guess. Hey, locker.